Bullies made the alien girl eat from the floor, until one human said, "Hold my beer." Before we dive into this story, drop a quick hi in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. It really helps support the channel. The cafeteria of Galactic Union Preparatory Academy buzzed with the usual lunchtime chaos. Situated on the neutral space station Harmony 7, it was one of the first schools designed to integrate species from across the known universe. Here, amid the gleaming metallic tables and food synthesizers, a small blue-skinned Arcturian girl named Lyra sat alone, her forearms wrapped protectively around her lunch tray. Lyra had arrived at the academy 3 weeks ago. Her father, a respected diplomat, had been assigned to the human sector, and the academy was supposed to be her chance to learn about other cultures before eventually following in his footsteps. So far, it had been nothing but misery. "Hey, forearms, that spot's reserved," came a sneering voice. Drac, a burly Centaurian with scaled skin and a reputation for tormenting smaller species, loomed over her table. Behind him stood his usual gang, 2 fellow Centaurians and a Plovian with razor-sharp teeth. "I didn't see any sign," Lyra said quietly, her voice barely audible over the cafeteria noise. Drac's yellow eyes narrowed. "That's because you need to learn your place, diplomat spawn. The sign is invisible to lower species." Laughter erupted from his group. The Plovian, Krez, leaned forward. "You know where lower species eat, right? Down there." He pointed to the floor, his teeth glinting under the artificial lights. Lyra clutched her tray tighter, her secondary arms trembling slightly. This wasn't the first time they'd targeted her. Last week, they'd accidentally spilled cleaner fluid on her cultural studies project. The week before that, they'd locked her in a maintenance closet for 3 hours. "I'm just trying to eat my lunch," she said, attempting to sound braver than she felt. Drac slammed a scaled fist on the table. The impact sent Lyra's food sliding dangerously close to the edge. "And I'm just telling you where you belong. Floor." Now, the cafeteria had grown quieter. Other students were watching, but no one stepped in. Most just looked away uncomfortably or pretended not to notice. The few human students present were absorbed in their own conversations at the far end of the hall. But Lyra began. Drac didn't wait for her to finish. With a swift motion, he knocked the tray from her hands, sending her lunch crashing to the floor. Purple nutrient paste and protein cubes scattered across the polished surface. "There," Drac said with mock sweetness. "Now you can eat where you belong." Tears welled in Lyra's large, almond-shaped eyes. In Arcturian culture, public humiliation was considered one of the cruelest punishments. She could feel the stares of everyone in the cafeteria burning into her blue skin. "Eat it," Drac demanded, pointing to the mess on the floor. "Show everyone what a good little lower species you are." His gang began to chant quietly. "Eat it, eat it, eat it." Lyra's forehands curled into fists. She wanted to run, to disappear, to be anywhere but here. But there was nowhere to go. The nearest exit was past Drac and his friends, and the staff supervisors were conveniently absent, as they often were when Drac started trouble. Slowly, she slid from her seat and knelt beside the scattered food. One tear escaped, rolling down her cheek and dropping onto the floor beside a squashed protein cube. The chanting grew louder. "Hey!" The single word cut through the cafeteria like a plasma knife. Conversation stopped. Heads turned. Near the entrance stood a human boy Lyra had never noticed before. Average height, with dark hair that fell across his forehead and deep brown eyes that were currently fixed on Drac with unmistakable anger. He wore the standard academy uniform, but his sleeves were rolled up, revealing arms corded with lean muscle. "What's going on here?" the human asked, his voice calm, but carrying an edge that silenced even Drac's gang. Drac recovered quickly, squaring his shoulders. "Nothing that concerns you, human. Just teaching the lower species some manners." The human's eyebrow raised. "Lower species? That's interesting coming from someone whose civilization still thinks antimatter is exotic technology." A few nervous laughs rippled through the cafeteria. Centaurians were notoriously sensitive about their technological development, which lagged behind many other species in the Galactic Union. Drax's scales darkened with anger. Watch yourself, human. You're outnumbered. The human walked forward, setting his own tray down on a nearby table. As he moved, Lyra noticed something odd. Many of the other students were shifting in their seats, watching with a strange mix of anticipation and concern. Even some of the non-human students seemed to recognize this particular human, and they weren't laughing anymore. "Hold my beer," the human said, handing an unmarked container to a startled Venusian sitting nearby. The phrase meant nothing to Lyra, but several human students at the far table suddenly sat up straighter, exchanging glances. "My name's Tyler Grant," the human said, now standing just a few feet from Drac. "And I'd like you to apologize to her." Drac gave a bark of laughter. "Apologize? To that?" He gestured dismissively at Lyra. "Humans really don't understand how things work here, do they?" Tyler shrugged. "I understand just fine. You're a bully picking on someone half your size because it makes you feel big. Tale as old as time, across every species. You have no idea who you're dealing with, human." Krez, the Plovian, hissed, stepping forward to flank Drac. "Drac's father commands a battle cruiser." "Good for him," Tyler replied, completely unimpressed. "My dad sells insurance." "Now, about that apology." Drac's patience snapped. He lunged forward, his scaled arms swinging toward Tyler's face in what should have been a devastating blow. Centaurians were known for their strength, nearly twice that of the average human. What happened next would become Academy legend. Tyler moved with a speed that seemed impossible. He sidestepped the punch with millimeters to spare, grabbed Drac's extended arm, and used the Centaurian's own momentum to flip him completely over. Drac crashed onto a table, sending trays and food flying as students scrambled away. Before anyone could react, Tyler had already turned to face the other bullies. "Anyone else want to explain the hierarchy to me?" Krez and the other two Centaurians exchanged uncertain glances. They'd never seen Drac taken down so easily, by anyone, let alone a human. "This isn't over," Krez snarled, but made no move to attack. Instead, the three of them helped Drac to his feet and retreated, shooting venomous glares over their shoulders. The cafeteria remained silent for a long moment before erupting into excited whispers. Tyler ignored them all, turning instead to Lyra, who was still kneeling on the floor, staring up at him with wide, disbelieving eyes. "Sorry about that," he said, extending a hand to help her up. "Some people need a more direct approach to learn manners." "I'm Tyler." Lyra hesitantly took his hand with one of her four, allowing him to pull her to her feet. "I'm Lyra," she said softly. "Thank you, but why did you help me?" Tyler's expression softened. "Because that's what humans do. Or at least, what we're supposed to do." He looked around at the mess on the floor. "Come on, let's get you some new food. You can sit with me and my friends if you want." As they walked toward the food synthesizers, Lyra glanced back at the other students. Many were still watching, their expressions ranging from shock to admiration. A few human students gave Tyler thumbs-up gestures. "Are you some kind of warrior?" Lyra asked quietly. "The way you moved." Tyler laughed. "No, nothing like that. I've just been taking Brazilian jiu-jitsu since I was 6. It's a martial art from Earth. But Centaurians are much stronger than humans. Everyone knows that. Strength isn't everything," Tyler said as they reached the synthesizers. "Technique and leverage can beat raw power any day. Plus, bullies usually don't expect resistance. They fold pretty quickly when someone stands up to them." Lyra programmed a new tray of food, her mind racing. Nothing about this human matched what she'd been taught about their species. Humans were supposed to be technologically advanced, but physically unremarkable, middle tier in the galactic hierarchy at best. Yet Tyler had dispatched Drac with seemingly no effort at all. "Won't you get in trouble?" she asked as they walked toward a table where 3 other humans, 2 boys and a girl, were sitting. Tyler shrugged. "Probably. Worth it, though." The human girl at the table made room as they approached. "Making friends again, Tyler?" she asked with a knowing smile. "This is Lyra," Tyler said, setting down his tray. "Lyra, these are my friends. That's Emily. The one rolling her eyes is Caleb, and that's Nathan." The blue diplomat's kid, right? Nathan asked, offering a friendly nod. I've seen you in xenobiology. Your presentation on Arcturian respiratory systems was interesting. Lyra blinked in surprise. She hadn't thought anyone had paid attention to her presentation. So, Emily said, leaning forward with interest, has Tyler explained yet that he's basically our resident knight in shining armor? Because that's a conversation you should have before you start thinking he's special or something. Tyler groaned. I am not a knight in anything. Last month, he took on 3 seniors who were harassing a freshman, Caleb said, ignoring Tyler's protest. Month before that, he organized a petition when the administration tried to cut the arts program. The guy can't help himself. They make me sound way more heroic than I am, Tyler told Lyra, a slight flush coloring his cheeks. I just don't like seeing people get pushed around. Lyra studied him curiously. On Arcturus, such behavior would be considered dangerous and disruptive. Arcturians believed in strict hierarchies and formal methods of conflict resolution. Direct confrontation was seen as primitive and chaotic. Yet there was something undeniably appealing about Tyler's approach. The way he'd stood up to Drac without hesitation, the easy confidence with which he'd dispatched a physically superior opponent, the casual way he'd invited her to join his friends. Incoming, Nathan muttered, nodding toward the cafeteria entrance. Assistant Principal Vorax, a tall, slender Regalian with metallic skin, was striding toward their table. His face was set in the neutral expression that passed for anger among his species. Mr. Grant, he said, his voice a melodious hum that nevertheless carried disapproval. I've received reports of another altercation involving you. Tyler sighed but stood to face the administrator. Yes, sir. There was a situation. A situation that required you to throw another student across a table? Vorax's silver eyes flickered briefly to Lyra before returning to Tyler. With respect, sir, Tyler said, his tone remaining polite but firm. Drac and his friends were bullying Lyra. They knocked her food to the floor and were trying to force her to eat from it. The assistant principal's metallic features shifted slightly. Is this true, Miss Ziraval? He asked, using Lyra's full family name. For eyes from nearby tables were watching. Lyra felt a moment of panic. In Arcturian culture, reporting others to authorities was almost as shameful as public humiliation. But then she caught Tyler's encouraging glance. Yes, sir, she said, her voice stronger than before. They've been targeting me since I arrived. Today was just worse than usual. Vorax's expression remained unchanged, but his posture stiffened slightly. I see. This is a serious accusation, Miss Ziraval. Bullying based on species is strictly against Academy policy. There are at least 30 witnesses, Tyler pointed out, gesturing around the cafeteria. And I'm pretty sure the security cameras caught everything. For a moment, Assistant Principal Vorax seemed to be calculating something. Then he gave a small nod. Very well. Mr. Grant, while your intentions may have been admirable, physical violence is never the appropriate response. You will report to detention after classes today. Tyler nodded, accepting the punishment without argument. As for Drac and his associates, Vorax continued, they will be dealt with according to Academy regulations. Miss Ziraval, I would like you to come to my office after lunch to provide a formal statement. With that, he turned and left, his metallic form catching the light as he moved. That went better than expected, Emily commented once Vorax was out of earshot. Usually, they try to give Tyler a week of detention. The Academy's been under pressure from the Galactic Union to address species-based harassment, Nathan explained to Lyra. Too many complaints from diplomatic families. Lyra looked at Tyler, who had sat back down and resumed eating as if nothing unusual had happened. You're not upset about getting detention? He shrugged. Small price to pay. Besides, I can use the time to catch up on reading. As lunch continued, Lyra found herself drawn into the humans' conversation. They asked about Arcturus, her family, her interests, treating her as an equal rather than an exotic curiosity or a lower species. It was refreshing. When the signal for the end of lunch period sounded, Tyler glanced at his schedule. What's your next class? Advanced Mathematical Theory with Professor Zan. Lyra replied. That's near my comparative literature class. I'll walk with you, he offered. As they left the cafeteria together, Lyra noticed something had changed. Other students who had previously ignored her existence now nodded in greeting or gave small smiles as she passed. A few even glared at Drac and his friends, who were huddled together at the far end of the corridor, shooting dark looks in their direction. Why did you say hold my beer? Lyra asked suddenly, remembering the strange phrase. You weren't drinking beer. Tyler laughed. It's just an old Earth expression. It basically means watch this. I'm about to do something crazy or impressive. Your species has strange sayings. You have no idea, Tyler agreed with a grin. But that's part of what makes us interesting. They reached the mathematics classroom, and Lyra paused at the door. Thank you again, Tyler. No one stood up for me like that before. Well, get used to it, he said with a warm smile. That's what friends do. Friends. The word sent an unexpected warmth through Lyra's chest. She'd come to the academy hoping to learn about other cultures, but had instead found herself isolated and targeted. Now, in the span of one lunch period, everything had changed, all because one human had decided to say, hold my beer. As she entered the classroom, Lyra couldn't help but think that perhaps the standard galactic assessment of humans needed serious revision. They might not be the strongest or the most technologically advanced species, but there was clearly something special about them, something that wasn't captured in any of the official reports or cultural briefings she'd studied. And she was determined to find out exactly what that something was. The next few days brought changes Lyra could never have anticipated. Word of Tyler's confrontation with Drax spread throughout the academy like wildfire, growing more elaborate with each retelling. By the third day, some versions claimed Tyler had fought off the entire Zentorian wrestling team while reciting Earth poetry. The reality was less dramatic but more meaningful. Drac and his friends had been placed on probation, required to attend cultural sensitivity training, and assigned to community service duties around the station. They still glared whenever they saw Lyra or Tyler, but they kept their distance. More importantly, Lyra was no longer alone. Tyler and his friends had welcomed her into their group without hesitation, and through them, she'd met other students, both human and non-human, who shared her interests in diplomacy, xenobiology, and classical music. You've been holding out on us, Emily said one afternoon as they sat in the Academy's observation dome, watching ships arrive and depart from the space station. Tyler says you play the Vorlax. Lyra ducked her head shyly. Not very well. I've only been learning for 3 years. 3 years is enough to be better than never, Nathan pointed out. The Cultural Exchange Festival is next month. You should sign up to perform. The suggestion made Lyra's stomachs clench with anxiety. The Vorlax was a traditional Arcturian instrument that required all 4 arms to play properly. The thought of performing it in front of the entire academy was terrifying. I don't think I'm ready for that, she said. Tyler, who had been quietly watching the starscape, turned to her. You know what humans say about things that scare us? Feel the fear and do it anyway. That seems counterintuitive, Lyra observed. Most human wisdom is, Caleb said with a laugh. But it works. The things that scare us are usually the things most worth doing. Lyra considered this. On Arcturus, caution and careful calculation were valued above all else. Risks were to be minimized, not embraced. Yet these humans seemed to operate on almost the opposite principle, treating fear as a compass pointing toward growth rather than a warning to retreat. I'll think about it, she promised, and was rewarded with approving smiles from her new friends. Later that week, as Lyra was leaving her diplomatic history class, she spotted a familiar scaled figure waiting in the corridor. Her first instinct was to turn and go another way, but she fought against it. Tyler had shown her that running from bullies only empowered them. Hello, Drac, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. The Zentorian's yellow eyes narrowed, but he made no aggressive move. Instead, he shifted uncomfortably and looked at the floor. The administrators are making me apologize to you, he said stiffly. So sorry. It was clearly not sincere, but Lyra recognized it for what it was, a public acknowledgement that his behavior had been wrong. In many ways, that was more valuable than genuine remorse. Apology accepted, she said simply, and moved to walk past him. Your human friend, Drax said suddenly, causing her to pause. He's not normal, even for a human. Lyra turned back. What do you mean? Drax seemed to struggle with himself before answering. My father's battle cruiser fought against humans during the Orion conflict. He says most of them are soft, but some are different. They have this thing they call righteous anger. It makes them dangerous. He met her eyes briefly. Your friend has it. I saw it when he looked at me. With that cryptic statement, he turned and walked away, leaving Lyra to ponder his words. That evening, she decided to ask her father about it when they spoke during their weekly call. Ambassador Zira was currently stationed on Earth, negotiating trade agreements with the human governments. Righteous anger, her father repeated, his blue features crinkling thoughtfully on the video screen. Yes, that's a very human concept. They believe that anger in defense of others, especially those who cannot defend themselves, is not only acceptable but virtuous. That seems chaotic, Lyra said, thinking of the Arcturian emphasis on emotional restraint. Her father smiled. Many species think so, but I've come to appreciate it during my time here. Humans have a unique moral courage that drives them to act when they see injustice, even at personal cost. It's why they've become such valuable members of the Galactic Union despite their relative youth as a spacefaring species. Is it true they fought off the Kronos hive without advanced weaponry? Lyra asked, remembering something Tyler had mentioned. Largely true, yes. Their first encounter with the hive occurred before they developed quantum shielding. They relied on tactical innovation and what they call grit to survive. Ambassador Zira leaned closer to the screen. Why these questions, daughter? Has something happened? Lyra told him about Tyler and the cafeteria incident, watching as her father's expression shifted from concern to something like pleased recognition. Ah, he said when she finished. You've encountered a very human phenomenon indeed. They call it standing up for the little guy. It's deeply ingrained in their culture, especially among their younger members. He paused. This Tyler Grant sounds like someone worth knowing. He is, Lyra agreed, feeling a strange warmth in her chest again. He and his friends have been very kind. Good. The diplomatic corps has been encouraging more cultural exchange with humans. Their perspective is refreshingly direct in a galaxy that often defaults to political maneuvering. Her father's eyes twinkled. And if you happen to learn some of that human confidence while you're there, I wouldn't consider it a bad thing. After the call ended, Lyra sat at her desk, thinking about everything that had happened since that day in the cafeteria. She'd arrived at the academy feeling isolated and intimidated, convinced that her only path forward was to keep her head down and avoid attracting attention. Tyler had shown her another way, one that involved standing tall, speaking up, and sometimes saying, "Hold my beer," before doing something that others thought impossible. Maybe, just maybe, there was something to this human approach after all. 2 weeks after the cafeteria incident, Lyra found herself in unprecedented territory. She was actually enjoying her time at the academy. Classes still presented challenges, but now she had friends to study with, people who sat with her at lunch, and even a growing reputation as someone knowledgeable about diplomatic protocols thanks to her father's influence. You should join the Diplomatic Simulation Club, Tyler suggested one day as they walked between classes. Nathan and I are members. It's basically role-playing complex negotiations between species. Lyra hesitated. I don't know. My diplomatic training has been very traditional. The human approach seems different. That's exactly why you should join, Tyler said, his eyes lighting up with enthusiasm. Different perspectives make for better solutions. The club could use someone with formal training. The invitation was tempting. Lyra had noticed that humans seemed to value diversity of thought in a way that many older species did not. On Arcturus, diplomatic training followed strict protocols established thousands of years ago. The idea of improvising or experimenting with new approaches was almost unheard of. When's the next meeting? She asked finally. Tyler's grin was answer enough. The Diplomatic Simulation Club met in a large classroom that had been reconfigured to resemble a Galactic Union conference chamber. About 20 students from various species were already there when Lyra arrived with Tyler. She recognized some from her classes, including a few who had witnessed the cafeteria confrontation. "Everyone, this is Lyra," Tyler announced. "Her father is the Arcturian ambassador to Earth, so she actually knows what she's talking about, unlike the rest of us." There were friendly laughs and welcoming nods. A human girl with auburn hair, Professor Chun, the faculty advisor, stepped forward. "Welcome, Lyra. We're just about to start a new simulation. The scenario is a resource dispute between mining colonies in the Rigel system. We'll be dividing into delegation teams." Lyra found herself assigned to represent the Rigelian consortium alongside Tyler and a Venusian named Zara. They were given 15 minutes to review the scenario and develop their negotiation strategy. "The key issue is water rights," Zara noted, her leaf-like appendages rustling as she reviewed the materials. "The human colony needs more than they were initially allocated. But we can't simply demand more," Lyra pointed out, falling back on her traditional training. "The established protocols for resource reallocation require a formal petition with supporting evidence of need, followed by a waiting period of at least one standard galactic cycle." Tyler frowned. "That would take months. The human colony would face severe water shortages by then." "Yes, but rules exist for a reason," Lyra insisted. "If we bypass them, we set a dangerous precedent." "Sometimes precedents need to be set," Tyler argued. "What if we approach this differently? Instead of thinking about rules first, what if we focus on needs and mutual benefits?" It was such a human perspective that Lyra almost dismissed it outright. But something in her had changed since meeting Tyler. She found herself considering his words rather than rejecting them. "What do you suggest?" she asked. Tyler's eyes lit up. "The Andorian delegation controls the ice mining operations in the outer system. What if we propose a three-way deal? The humans get emergency water shipments now. The Rigelians get preferential access to rare minerals the humans have discovered, and the Andorians get improved technology from both sides to enhance their mining efficiency." Lyra blinked in surprise. It was unorthodox, creative, and completely outside the standard diplomatic playbook she'd been taught. It was also potentially brilliant. "That's not how interspecies negotiations typically work," she said slowly. "Maybe it should be," Tyler replied with a shrug. "Everybody wins." When the simulation began, Lyra found herself watching in fascination as Tyler put his idea into action. He approached the Andorian delegation first, planting the seed of mutual benefit, then moved to the humans, framing the proposal as a solution rather than a concession. His style was direct yet respectful, passionate yet controlled. He made eye contact with everyone, regardless of species, and spoke with a conviction that made people listen. By the end of the session, they had negotiated exactly the agreement Tyler had envisioned. Professor Chun was visibly impressed. "That was unconventional diplomacy," she commented during the debriefing. "Most simulations follow traditional Galactic Union protocols, but today's solution was both creative and practical. Well done to the Rigelian team." As they left the club meeting, Lyra studied Tyler with new eyes. "You're very good at this. Have you considered a diplomatic career?" He laughed. "Not really. I'm more interested in xenoanthropology, studying how different species and cultures interact. Diplomacy is just one aspect of that. You see connections others miss," Lyra observed. "That's rare, even among professional diplomats." Tyler seemed embarrassed by the praise. "I just try to put myself in everyone's position. Most conflicts happen because people can't see past their own perspective." It was such a simple statement, yet it contained a wisdom that struck Lyra deeply. Her father had often said something similar about his work, but hearing it from Tyler, seeing how he applied it instinctively, made the concept feel more immediate and practical. As they walked through the academy corridors, a notice on the digital bulletin board caught Tyler's eye. "Look," he said, pointing. "They've announced the performance slots for the Cultural Exchange Festival. You should sign up for the Vorlax demonstration." Lyra's stomach clenched again at the thought. "I don't think I'm ready for that." "When will you be ready?" Tyler asked gently. "Sometimes you just have to take the leap." "Another human saying?" "One of our better ones," he admitted with a smile. Think about it, okay? You'd be amazing. His confidence in her was both flattering and terrifying. The festival was a major event at the Academy, attended by students, faculty, and often diplomats from the Galactic Union. The thought of performing in front of such an audience made Lyra's blue skin pale several shades. Yet Tyler's words stayed with her. Feel the fear and do it anyway. Take the leap. So very human, so very different from the careful, measured approach she'd been raised with. That evening, before she could talk herself out of it, Lyra submitted her application for a performance slot. As soon as she hit send, panic washed over her, followed by a strange exhilaration. She'd done something impulsive, something that scared her, and somehow it felt right. The following days passed in a blur of classes, club meetings, and, now, Vorlax practice. Lyra found herself spending more time with Tyler and his friends, absorbing their perspectives, learning their jokes, beginning to understand the unique human outlook on life that made them such a fascinating species. One afternoon, as they sat in the observation dome watching ships come and go, Emily nudged Lyra's arm. You're performing at the festival, right? Tyler mentioned you play some kind of four-armed instrument. Lyra nodded, her anxiety rising at the mere mention of her upcoming performance. The Vorlax. It's important in Arcturian culture. That's awesome, Emily said with genuine enthusiasm. I've signed up too. I'm doing a traditional Earth dance called ballet. Maybe we could practice together sometime? Help each other prepare. The offer took Lyra by surprise. On Arcturus, artistic pursuits were solitary endeavors, with practice sessions kept strictly private until the final performance. The idea of collaborating, of showing her imperfect skills to someone else, was foreign but intriguing. I'd like that, she found herself saying. True to her word, Emily met Lyra in one of the Academy's practice rooms the next day. They took turns performing, offering each other feedback and encouragement. Emily's ballet was graceful yet powerful, telling a story through movement that transcended language barriers. When it was Lyra's turn, she felt nervous at first, her forearms slightly out of sync as she played the complex, harmonious tones of the Vorlax. That's beautiful, Emily said when she finished. What does the song mean? It's called Reflection of Distant Stars, Lyra explained. It's traditionally played during diplomatic ceremonies to remind everyone that we all share the same universe, regardless of our differences. Perfect for the festival, then, Emily nodded approvingly. You just need to believe in yourself a bit more. You tense up when you hit the complicated parts. I know, Lyra sighed. I'm afraid of making mistakes in front of everyone. Emily considered this for a moment. You know what helps me with performance anxiety? Remembering that most people in the audience couldn't do what I'm doing if their lives depended on it. You're already impressive just by being up there. It was such a uniquely human perspective, finding confidence not in flawless execution, but in the courage to try. Lyra found herself smiling. I'll try to remember that. Their practice sessions became a regular occurrence. Sometimes Tyler or the others would join them, offering encouragement or simply keeping them company. Through these sessions, Lyra began to understand something her father had once told her about humans. They thrived on connection, drawing strength from each other in ways that many other species found puzzling but powerful. 2 days before the festival, disaster struck. Lyra was carrying her Vorlax to the practice room when she encountered Drac and Krez in the corridor. The bullies had kept their distance since the cafeteria incident, but something in their demeanor today made Lyra instinctively tighten her grip on her instrument. Planning your big performance? Drac asked, his tone deceptively casual. Everyone's talking about the four-armed wonder. Lyra tried to walk past them without engaging, but Krez stepped into her path. We heard you've become quite the celebrity. The human's pet project. Excuse me, Lyra said firmly, channeling some of the confidence she'd gained over the past weeks. I need to practice. Of course you do, Drac said with mock politeness. Then, with deliberate slowness, he reached out and placed one scaled finger on the Vorlax. Delicate instrument, isn't it? Would be a shame if something happened to it. Fear shot through Lyra, not for herself, but for the Vorlax. It had been a gift from her grandfather, handcrafted from rare Arcturian crystal. It was irreplaceable. Don't, she warned, pulling the instrument closer to her chest. Drax smiled, a cold expression that didn't reach his yellow eyes. Just making conversation. Good luck with your performance. He and Krez moved past her, their message delivered. The threat hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Lyra stood frozen for several moments, her heart's racing. When she finally continued to the practice room, her hands were trembling too much to play. Emily found her there, sitting silently with the Vorlax cradled in her forearms. Lyra? What's wrong? The story spilled out. Emily's expression darkened as she listened. Those jerks, she muttered when Lyra finished. We need to tell someone. Tell them what? They didn't actually do anything. They threatened you. Or at least, they threatened your instrument, which is basically the same thing. Lyra shook her head. It would be my word against theirs. And if I report them and nothing happens, they'll only be angrier. Emily considered this. Then we need a different approach. Come on, let's find Tyler. Tyler was in the library, studying xenobiology with Nathan and Caleb. His expression grew serious as Emily recounted what had happened. We need to protect the Vorlax, he said immediately. Lyra can't carry it around alone until after the festival. I was thinking the same thing, Emily agreed. We'll take shifts, escort her to and from practice, make sure the instrument is never unattended. And I'll talk to some friends on the security team, Nathan added. They can keep an extra eye on the storage lockers. Lyra looked at her friends with amazement. You'd do all that for me? Of course, Tyler said simply, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. That's what friends do. For the next 2 days, Lyra was never alone when carrying her Vorlax. Tyler, Emily, Nathan, and Caleb organized themselves into an informal security detail, walking her to and from practice sessions, sitting with her during meals, making sure Drac and his friends had no opportunity to follow through on their implied threat. Other students noticed, and, to Lyra's surprise, several volunteered to help. A Proximan who had once ignored her now offered to watch the Vorlax during a period when none of her human friends were available. 2 Venusians made a point of sitting near her during lunch, their vine-like appendages creating a subtle but effective barrier against anyone who might approach with ill intent. It was a show of solidarity that transcended species boundaries, inspired, Lyra realized, by the example Tyler had set in the cafeteria that day. One human's courage had created ripples that were still expanding outward, changing the Academy's culture in small but significant ways. The night before the festival, Lyra called her father. I'm nervous about tomorrow, she admitted. Ambassador Zira's blue features softened with understanding. Performance anxiety is natural. But remember, the Vorlax is not just about technical perfection. It's about expressing the harmony between different elements. From what you've told me about your time at the Academy lately, I think you understand that better now than ever before. His words resonated with her. The Vorlax, with its 4 playing arms creating distinct but harmonious melodies, was indeed a perfect symbol for what she had experienced. Different species, different perspectives, coming together to create something greater than the sum of its parts. I think I do understand, she said slowly. And I have some amazing friends helping me see it. These humans have been good for you, her father observed with a smile. I look forward to meeting them someday. The day of the Cultural Exchange Festival arrived. The main auditorium had been transformed with decorations representing dozens of worlds. Food stations offered delicacies from across the galaxy. Performance areas had been set up throughout the space, allowing multiple presentations to occur simultaneously. Lyra waited backstage at the central performance area, her Vorlax held carefully in her forearms. Despite all the precautions, she hadn't been able to shake the fear that Drac might somehow interfere. Every shadow, every unexpected sound made her jump. 5 minutes until you're on, a stage coordinator informed her. Lyra nodded, her mouth suddenly dry. The audience was much larger than she'd anticipated. Not just students and faculty, but visiting dignitaries, parents, and even a few media representatives were in attendance. You've got this, came Tyler's voice from behind her. He, Emily, Nathan, and Caleb had arrived to offer moral support. Remember, you're already impressive just by being up there. What if I make a mistake? Lyra whispered, the old fear rising again. Then you make a mistake, Tyler shrugged. The universe continues spinning. But you'll have done something brave, and that's what matters. Emily stepped forward to adjust one of the decorative clips in Lyra's head tendrils. Besides, you sound amazing. You've been practicing nonstop. And we've got your back, Nathan added. Literally, we'll be right behind the stage the whole time. The stage coordinator reappeared. You're up, Miss Ziravel. Lyra took a deep breath, looking at her friends' encouraging faces. Hold my beer, she said with a nervous smile, using the human phrase for the first time. Tyler's surprised laugh followed her as she stepped onto the stage. The lights were bright, the audience a blur of faces. Lyra took her position on the small stool designed to accommodate her Arcturian physiology. She closed her eyes briefly, centering herself as she'd been taught, and then began to play. The first notes were tentative, her fingers still tight with anxiety. But as the familiar melody flowed through her, something shifted. She remembered Emily's words about tension, Tyler's confidence in her, the support of her friends. Her forearms relaxed, moving more fluidly across the crystalline strings of the Vorlax. The music swelled, filling the auditorium with harmonies that seemed to weave together like different voices in conversation. This was the heart of the piece, four distinct melodic lines representing different perspectives, initially discordant but gradually finding common ground, building toward a resonance that was more powerful because of its diversity. Lyra lost herself in the performance, her earlier fear forgotten. When she played the final notes and opened her eyes, the audience was silent for a heartbeat, then erupted into applause. Tyler and the others were on their feet, cheering loudly. Even some of the dignitaries were nodding in approval. As Lyra stood to take a bow, a movement at the back of the auditorium caught her eye. Drac was there, watching with an unreadable expression. For a moment, their eyes met across the distance. Then, to Lyra's shock, the Zentorian gave a small, almost imperceptible nod before turning away. Backstage, her friends surrounded her with congratulations and hugs. That was incredible, Emily exclaimed. The way you played those 4 different melody lines at once. I've never heard anything like it. You own that stage, Nathan agreed. Standing ovation from the Rigelian ambassador. That's practically unheard of. Lyra was still processing the rush of emotions. Relief, pride, and an overwhelming gratitude for these humans who had helped her find a courage she hadn't known she possessed. Thank you, she said simply. For everything. Don't thank us, Tyler replied with a smile. You're the one who got up there and did it. We just provided moral support. The rest of the festival passed in a blur of performances, conversations, and celebrations. Lyra watched Emily's ballet with newfound appreciation for the physical discipline it required. She sampled foods from a dozen worlds, discussed cultural traditions with visitors, and felt, for the first time, truly part of the Academy community. As the event wound down, Assistant Principal Vorex approached their group. Miss Ziravel, your performance was most impressive. Several of our guests have commented on the technical skill and emotional depth you displayed. Thank you, sir, Lyra replied, still riding the high of her success. I also wanted to inform you, Vorex continued, his metallic features shifting to what passed for a smile among Rigelians, that the Academy will be implementing new anti-bullying protocols next semester, partially inspired by recent events. We would value your input as someone with first-hand experience. Lyra glanced at Tyler, who gave her an encouraging nod. I would be honored to contribute, sir. After Vorex departed, the friends made their way to the observation dome, which was quieter than the main celebration areas. The starscape stretched before them, countless worlds and possibilities glittering against the void. So, Tyler said, leaning against the railing beside Lyra, still think humans have strange sayings? She laughed. Definitely. But I'm beginning to see their value. I talked to Drac after your performance, he said, surprising her. He actually seemed impressed. Said he didn't think Arcturians had that kind of, What did he call it? Expressive capacity. Really? Lyra found that hard to believe. Really? He's still a jerk, don't get me wrong. But maybe a slightly less prejudiced jerk now. Tyler shrugged. People can change when their assumptions get challenged. Lyra thought about how much she had changed in the weeks since that day in the cafeteria. How she'd gone from eating alone to having friends who would organize a security detail for her musical instrument. How she'd gone from fearing attention to performing on stage. How she'd begun to incorporate human perspectives into her diplomatic training, finding value in approaches she once would have dismissed as unorthodox. My father says humans have a unique place in the Galactic Union, she said thoughtfully. He believes your species brings something essential to interstellar relations, a willingness to question established hierarchies, to stand up for principles even when it's inconvenient. We're stubborn that way, Tyler agreed with a grin. We don't always get it right, but we keep trying. It's more than stubbornness, Lyra insisted. It's courage. Moral courage, like my father said. The kind that made you say, hold my beer, and stand up to someone twice your size, because it was the right thing to do. Tyler seemed embarrassed by her assessment. Anyone would have done the same. But they didn't, Lyra pointed out. Only you did. And it changed everything. For me, for Drac, maybe even for the Academy. The others joined them at the railing, and the conversation shifted to plans for the upcoming break. As Lyra listened to her friends debate the merits of various vacation destinations, she felt a profound sense of belonging. These humans had welcomed her into their circle without hesitation, shared their perspectives, taught her to see fear as a challenge rather than a warning, shown her the power of standing up rather than backing down. In diplomatic briefings, humans were often described as an enigma, a young species that had advanced remarkably quickly, sometimes reckless, always passionate, oddly effective in crisis situations. Arcturian analysts tended to view these traits with suspicion, preferring the predictability of older, more established species. But Lyra now understood what those analyses missed. The same characteristics that made humans unpredictable also made them innovative. Their emotional intensity, rather than being a weakness, drove them to act when others would hesitate. Their willingness to challenge established norms allowed them to see solutions that more traditional approaches might miss. And perhaps most importantly, their instinct to protect others, to say, hold my beer, and step into dangerous situations when someone was being treated unjustly, made them powerful allies in a universe where power too often came at the expense of compassion. As the stars wheeled slowly past the observation dome's transparent ceiling, Lyra made a silent promise to herself. When she eventually followed her father into the diplomatic corps, she would remember these lessons. She would bring a little bit of that human perspective, that moral courage, that creative problem-solving, that willingness to feel the fear and do it anyway, to her work. After all, if one human saying, hold my beer, could change her world so dramatically, imagine what might be possible if that same spirit were applied to the greater challenges facing the galaxy. Sometimes, the most important diplomatic tools weren't formal protocols or ancient traditions, but the simple, powerful human willingness to stand up and say, this isn't right, and I'm going to do something about it. And that was the end of the story. If you listened all the way to here, don't forget to leave feedback about what you thought of the story in the comments, whether positive or negative. Your feedback helps us improve. Also leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. And I'll leave here on the screen another video that I'm sure you'll like. Big hug, and see you in the next story.